The deafening screech of failing engines filled my ears as my research vessel plummeted through the azure atmosphere of this uncharted world. Warning lights flashed across every console, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the cockpit. So much for my routine exploration mission. I gripped the controls with white knuckles, desperately trying to level out as the ground rushed up to meet me. Come on, come on, I muttered through gritted teeth, pulling back with everything I had. The impact came like a sledgehammer, rattling my teeth and sending me slamming against the restraints. When the world finally stopped spinning, I found myself hanging upside down, blood rushing to my head. Perfect. Just perfect. After a few moments of fumbling with the buckles, I crashed ungracefully onto what used to be the ceiling. Through the cracked view screen, I could see an alien landscape bathed in the pink light of twin suns, rolling purple hills covered in what looked like crystalline vegetation that chimed softly in the breeze. As I assessed the damage to my ship, reality started sinking in. The quantum drive was completely fried, communications were dead, and my emergency beacon was barely functioning. I was stranded on an unexplored planet, light years from the nearest human outpost. But that wasn't even the strangest part. My ship's sensors, though damaged, were picking up clear signs of artificial structures and technology scattered across the landscape. This supposedly uninhabited world wasn't so uninhabited after all. I gathered what supplies I could salvage and set out to investigate, my survival training kicking in. The crystalline plants clinked together like wind chimes as I made my way through them, creating an almost musical atmosphere that would have been soothing if I wasn't so on edge. That's when I saw it, a gleaming spire in the distance, clearly artificial and definitely not of human origin. As I got closer, I started noticing movement among the crystal formations, quick flashes of iridescent colors, the sound of hurried footsteps, and what sounded suspiciously like giggling. I froze in my tracks when I realized I was being watched, not by one pair of eyes, but by many. The natives of this world had been observing me since I crashed, and they were about to make themselves known. From behind the crystal structures emerged the most unexpected sight I could have imagined. They were clearly female, roughly humanoid in appearance, but with subtle alien features, slightly larger eyes that sparkled with an inner light, skin that seemed to shift colors like mother of pearl, and hair that floated as if suspended in water despite the normal gravity. But what struck me most was their demeanor. They appeared almost shy, curious, like they'd never seen anything like me before. One of them, seemingly braver than the rest, took a tentative step forward. She appeared to be young by their standards, with an almost childlike wonder in her expression. She pointed at my crashed ship in the distance and made a series of musical sounds that my universal translator struggled to process. When it finally did, I nearly dropped my survival pack in surprise. "You came from the stars?" she asked, her translated voice filled with awe, like in the old stories. The others crowded closer now, their earlier nervousness giving way to unbridled curiosity. That's when I realized something that made my heart skip a beat. I wasn't just dealing with aliens. I was dealing with what appeared to be an entire population of inexperienced, young alien females who had never encountered outsiders before. As they surrounded me with their endless questions and wide-eyed wonder, one thought kept running through my mind. What happened to their civilization? Where were the elders, the leaders, the experienced ones who should be handling first contact? The answers to those questions would have to wait, though, because at that moment, a deep rumbling sound echoed across the crystalline landscape, and every single one of my new acquaintances froze in terror. Whatever was coming, it was clear that my arrival had just complicated an already complex situation, and I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly what these young aliens were so afraid of. I'll continue the story while keeping it engaging and appropriate for YouTube. Given the length requested, I'll focus on developing the plot and characters naturally while maintaining suspense. The rumbling grew louder, and I could feel vibrations through the crystalline ground beneath my feet. The young aliens quickly pulled me behind one of the larger crystal formations, their iridescent skin shifting to match the purple-blue hues of their surroundings. A form of natural camouflage, I realized. One of them, the first one who had spoken to me, pressed a finger to her lips in a surprisingly human gesture of silence. "The Guardians," she whispered, her translated voice trembling. "They must not find you." The others huddled closer, their eyes fixed on something in the distance that I couldn't yet see. Through gaps in the crystal formation, I caught glimpses of massive shapes moving across the landscape, each easily the size of my crashed ship. They seemed to be mechanical in nature, their metallic bodies reflecting the pink sunlight as they performed what looked like a patrol pattern. When the rumbling finally faded into the distance, I turned to my newfound companions. "I'm Adam," I said softly, figuring introductions were in order. "I'm a deep space explorer from Earth." The young alien who had first approached me tilted her head curiously. "I am Song of Morning Light," she replied, her actual name being a complex series of musical tones that my translator simplified. "These are my sisters of the Crystal Hive." As the group relaxed slightly, I began to notice more details about them. Though they appeared young, their eyes held an intelligence that spoke of a complex civilization. Their seemingly simple clothing was actually made of incredibly advanced materials that shifted and adapted to their movements. Most fascinating was how they communicated among themselves, not just with words, but with subtle color changes in their skin and musical tones that my translator couldn't quite capture. "The Guardians," I prompted gently. "What are they?" Song of Morning Light exchanged glances with her companions before responding. "They were created by the Elders before the Great Sleep. They protect us, keep us safe within the crystal hives." There was something in her tone that suggested "protect" might not be the most accurate translation. Another of the young aliens, who introduced herself as Dancer in Starlight, added, "The Elders programmed them to preserve our culture, to watch over us until we were ready." She gestured at the massive spire I had noticed earlier. "We live, we learn, we grow, but we may not leave the hives. The Guardians enforce this law." The pieces started coming together in my mind, but they painted a troubling picture. "And these elders," I asked carefully, "where are they now?" The group fell silent, their skin colors dimming to muted tones of gray and blue. Song of Morning Light's voice was barely a whisper when she replied, "They sleep deep beneath the crystal plains. They have slept for many cycles, leaving us in the care of the Guardians." I took a moment to process this information. Whatever catastrophe had forced the Elders into this great sleep had left behind only the younger generation, protected, or perhaps imprisoned, by automated Guardians. But something wasn't adding up. "Why are you all?" I struggled to find a diplomatic way to phrase it. "Female." Song of Morning Light finished for me, a shimmer of amusement crossing her pearlescent skin. "Our species has 3 genders, but the Elders who chose to sleep were all of the 3rd gender, the knowledge bearers. She paused, searching for words. "They believed they could protect us best this way, keeping us in a state of perpetual youth until they awakened." Dancer in Starlight moved closer, her expression earnest. "But we are not children anymore. We have learned, grown, thought for ourselves. The Guardians continue their programming, but they cannot understand that we have evolved beyond their original parameters." Her skin flickered with patterns that my translator interpreted as frustration. A sudden shift in the group's attention made me look up. Through the crystal canopy above, I could see my emergency beacon's signal reflecting off the atmosphere. A steady pulse of light that would be visible from orbit. Song of Morning Light's expression transformed from worry to hope. "The Guardians will have detected your crash. They will find your ship soon." She grabbed my hand, her touch surprisingly warm. "But perhaps, before they do, you can help us. We have questions, so many questions, about the universe beyond our world. And we may know where to find answers," added another young alien who called herself Weaver of Dreams. She pointed toward a section of the crystal plains that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "There are ruins there, remnants of the time before the Great Sleep. The Guardians prevent us from exploring them, but with your help." I found myself caught between curiosity and caution. On one hand, interfering with the automated systems of an alien civilization could have serious consequences. On the other hand, looking at these intelligent, capable beings trapped in an outdated system of protection, I couldn't help but want to understand more, to help if I could. A distant rumble, different from the Guardian's patrol, caught our attention. Song of Morning Light's skin paled to an almost translucent state. "They've found your ship," she said urgently. "We must move quickly. The ruins contain a terminal, an interface to the Guardian's primary systems. If we can reach it," she left the implication hanging. I thought of my own predicament, stranded on an alien world with a damaged ship. These young aliens might be my best chance at survival, and I might be their best chance at freedom. Looking at their hopeful expressions, I made my decision. "Lead the way," I said, "but we'll need a plan. Tell me everything you know about these Guardians." As we began moving through the crystal forest, using the formations for cover, Song of Morning Light and her companions began sharing their knowledge. The Guardians, it seemed, were more than just mechanical sentries. They were part of a vast network that maintained the entire ecosystem of the crystal hives. Climate control, food production, education systems, all managed by ancient AI following protocols established by the sleeping elders. The worst part, Dancer in Starlight explained as we carefully navigated around a patrol route, is that they're not malicious. They truly believe they're protecting us. Their protocols simply haven't adapted to account for our growth, our desire to learn and explore. Her skin rippled with patterns that the translator interpreted as a complex mix of affection and frustration. The crystal formations grew denser as we approached the ruins, their surfaces reflecting and refracting light in ways that created natural camouflage. I began to understand why the young aliens had survived here for so long. The entire environment seemed designed to protect them, even from their protectors. Weaver of Dreams took point, leading us through a series of seemingly solid crystal walls that turned out to be sophisticated holograms. "The elders left back doors," she explained proudly. "Ways to move around without the Guardian's knowledge. We've spent cycles mapping them, preparing." She trailed off, but I could guess what she meant. They'd been planning some form of rebellion, lacking only the catalyst, which my arrival might have just provided. As we moved deeper into the ruins, the architecture began to change. The natural crystal formations gave way to engineered structures, elegant spires and archways that seemed to grow from the ground itself. The air hummed with latent energy, and my suit's sensors detected complex power signatures emanating from below the surface. Song of Morning Light stopped suddenly, her skin flashing warning patterns. Through the crystalline walls, we could see the massive form of a Guardian moving past. Up close, I could finally make out its true form, a graceful yet intimidating fusion of mechanical and crystal technology, its surface covered in the same iridescent material as the alien's skin. It moved with an almost organic fluidity, its sensors sweeping the area in precise patterns. "They're searching more thoroughly than usual," Dancer in Starlight whispered. "Your crash has disrupted their routines." She turned to me, her large eyes reflecting the ambient light. "They will not harm you. Their primary protocols prevent harm to any sentient life. But they will try to contain you, study you, and ultimately protect you, just as they protect us." The way she said "protect" sent a chill down my spine. I was starting to understand that the Guardian's version of protection was essentially a gilded cage, no matter how well-intentioned. As we waited for the patrol to pass, I noticed something else about my companions, subtle markings on their skin that looked almost like circuitry. When I asked about them, Song of Morning Light's expression grew serious. "They are connections," she explained, "to the Crystal Hive's systems. The elders intended them to be educational tools, ways for us to learn about our history and technology. But the Guardians control what information we can access." She touched one of the markings, and it glowed faintly. "We've learned to use them in ways the Guardians don't expect. Small acts of rebellion." The Guardian finally moved out of range, and we continued our careful progress toward what appeared to be a central chamber. The ruins had clearly once been a magnificent complex, but now portions lay dormant, their crystals dark and lifeless. Weaver of Dreams explained that power was strategically rerouted by the Guardians to prevent access to certain areas, particularly those containing historical records or advanced technology. As we approached our destination, I couldn't help but ask the question that had been nagging at me. "The elders, Why did they really go into this great sleep? The young aliens exchanged looks, their skin patterns shifting in what I was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of a nonverbal conversation. The official records say they sought to preserve themselves until a great danger had passed. Song of Morning Light finally answered. But we found fragments of data, incomplete records that suggest something else. They were afraid, not of an external threat, but of change, of losing control as our species evolved. She gestured to the ruins around us. This entire system, the Guardians, the crystal hives, even their own suspended animation, it was all designed to freeze us in a moment of time they considered perfect. The implications were staggering. An entire civilization essentially placed in stasis by its elders, who chose to sleep rather than face the inevitable evolution of their society. And now, generations later, their descendants had grown beyond the constraints placed upon them but remained trapped by automated systems that couldn't comprehend such growth. We finally reached what appeared to be our destination, a vast chamber filled with dormant crystal terminals. At its center stood a pillar of pure light, pulsing with complex patterns that made my translator glitch. Song of Morning Light approached it reverently, her skin synchronizing with its rhythms. "This is a nexus point," she explained, "one of the few remaining direct interfaces to the Guardian network. If we can access it—" A distant rumble interrupted her, closer than before. The Guardians were closing in, their search pattern tightening around our location. We had minutes at most before they found us. Dancer in Starlight quickly moved to one of the terminals, her fingers dancing across its crystalline surface. "We've never had enough time to fully interface with the system," she explained. "The Guardians always find us too quickly, but with your help, with technology they've never encountered before." She looked meaningfully at my damaged but still functional tablet. I understood what they were suggesting. My human technology, primitive as it might seem compared to theirs, would be completely unknown to the Guardians' security protocols. It might provide the backdoor they needed. But as I reached for my tablet, a new sound echoed through the chamber, a harmonic resonance that made the crystals around us vibrate in sympathy. Song of Morning Light's skin went completely white. "That's impossible," she whispered. "That's the awakening sequence. The elders, your crash must have triggered something in their stasis systems." Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "We're out of time. Whatever we're going to do, it has to be now." The chamber began to pulse with increasing energy as the harmonic resonance grew stronger. Through the crystalline walls, we could see multiple Guardian units converging on our location, and somewhere below us, ancient stasis pods were beginning to activate, their occupants stirring from millennia of sleep. We stood at a crossroads of past and future, with mere moments to decide which path to take. I looked at my young alien companions, seeing in their faces the same determination I'd seen in countless human revolutionaries throughout history. They weren't asking to destroy their civilization. They simply wanted the freedom to grow, to learn, to evolve. The question was, could we find a way to access the Guardian systems and update their protocols before either the Guardians reached us or the Elders awakened? Song of Morning Light held out her hand, her skin pulsing with patterns that needed no translation. Trust, hope, determination. I took a deep breath and pulled out my tablet, hoping that sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. As the chamber resonated with the combined harmonics of approaching Guardians and awakening Elders, we prepared to attempt something that would either free an entire civilization or cause everything to come crashing down around us. The crystalline walls began to glow with increasing intensity, and I could hear the heavy footsteps of Guardian units just outside the chamber. Song of Morning Light's grip tightened on my hand as we faced the central interface, ready to attempt something that had never been done before, a fusion of human and alien technology that might just change everything. The next few moments would determine not just my fate, but the future of an entire civilization caught between preservation and progress. As I connected my tablet to the crystal interface, watching alien code merge with human technology, I couldn't help but wonder if the Elders had ever considered that their perfect moment might not be so perfect after all. The moment my tablet connected to the crystal interface, the chamber erupted in a spectacular display of light and color. Streams of data flow through the crystalline walls like liquid rainbows, my tablet's screen filling with cascading alien code that somehow began translating itself into recognizable patterns. The young aliens around me gasped, their skin synchronizing with the pulsing lights. "It's working," Dancer in Starlight whispered, her eyes wide as she watched human and alien technology merge. "The Guardian systems, they don't know how to categorize this input. It's creating a temporary blind spot in their protocols." She rushed to another terminal, her fingers dancing across its surface with newfound purpose. The heavy footsteps of the Guardian units grew closer, their harmonic resonance clashing with the awakening sequence from below. Through the crystalline walls, I could see their massive forms surrounding the chamber, but they seemed hesitant to enter. Song of Morning Light's skin flickered with sudden understanding. "They're confused," she explained, her voice filled with wonder. "Your technology, it's making them question their base protocols. For the first time in our history, they're encountering something they weren't programmed to handle." Her hands joined mine on the tablet, and I felt a subtle electric current pass between us as her natural connection to the systems merged with my device's interface. Weaver of Dreams suddenly called out from another terminal. "The stasis chambers. 3 levels of elders have already begun the awakening process. We have minutes, maybe less." The chamber's pulsing increased in intensity, and I could feel vibrations through the floor suggesting massive machinery activating deep below. My tablet screen was now. I looked at my tablet's display, watching as the Guardian's code continued to evolve and adapt to our interference. We were changing things, yes, but were we changing them for the better? Or were we about to unleash something we couldn't control? Song of Morning Light seemed to sense my hesitation. "We have to continue," she urged, her skin pulsing with determination. "The elders designed this system because they fear change, but change is part of life, part of growth. Look at what we've already accomplished by embracing it." She gestured to the frozen Guardian units, then to the merger of our technologies. Suddenly, a new harmonic resonance filled the chamber, different from both the Guardians and the awakening sequence. The crystalline walls began to shift and reshape themselves, and a hidden passage appeared behind the central interface. Weaver of Dreams rushed to scan it, her skin flashing with excitement. "It's a direct path to the stasis control center," she exclaimed. "The elders must have built it as an emergency override route." But her expression fell slightly. "The passage will only admit 2 at most. Any more, and the security systems will seal it permanently." Time seemed to freeze as we all processed this information. The Guardian units remained motionless but could reactivate at any moment. The awakening sequence was proceeding below, threatening to revive elders who might be less than pleased with our attempted revolution. And now we had a potential solution, but one that would force us to split up. Song of Morning Light's skin rippled with decisive patterns. "You," she said, looking at me intently, "your technology, combined with my natural connection to the systems. We're the only ones with a chance of reaching the control center in time." She turned to her companions. "The rest of you need to stay here. Keep working on the Guardian protocols. We have to attack this problem from both ends." Dancer in Starlight stepped forward, her skin displaying patterns of both worry and support. The Guardian units won't stay confused forever. Once their adaptive protocols process enough data about this new technology, they'll find a way to counteract it. You'll have minutes at most. The chamber shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the crystal walls, we could see more awakening sequences initiating, spreading out like a wave from the crash site of my ship. Whatever cascade effect we'd started was accelerating. Soon, the entire complex would be awake and active. I looked at my tablet, now thoroughly integrated with the alien systems, then at the hidden passage, and finally at Song of Morning Light's determined face. Everything had led to this moment. My crash, their rebellion, the merging of our technologies. We were about to attempt something that would change their entire civilization, for better or worse. The Guardian units suddenly shifted, their crystalline forms beginning to pulse with new patterns. Our window of confusion was closing. Song of Morning Light grabbed my hand, her skin glowing with urgency. "Choose now," she said simply. "Help me save my people from their own fear of change, or let the cycle continue forever. Behind us, the first Guardian unit took a step forward, its movements still sluggish but growing more certain by the second. Below, the sounds of awakening machinery reached a fever pitch, and before us, the hidden passage beckoned, a final chance to reach the heart of a system built to preserve the past, even at the cost of the future. The next few seconds would determine everything. As I made my decision, I couldn't help but wonder if the elders, in their desperate attempt to preserve their civilization, had actually created the very thing they feared most, a catalyst for revolutionary change, just waiting for the right moment to be activated. Song of Morning Light's hand tightened around mine as the passage before us pulsed with potential, and the weight of an entire civilization's future pressed down upon us like a physical force. Whatever happened next would echo through their history forever, assuming we survived long enough to make it. With one final look at the others, I nodded to Song of Morning Light, and we plunged into the hidden passage. The crystalline tunnel sealed behind us immediately, cutting off the sounds of the chamber. Our way forward was lit only by the pulsing glow of my tablet and the bioluminescent patterns flowing across Song of Morning Light's skin. We moved as quickly as we dared through the twisting passage, every step taking us deeper into the heart of the complex. The walls around us thrummed with energy, and I could feel the vibrations of massive machinery through the floor. But something was off about the resonance. It didn't match the patterns we'd observed above. Wait, Song of Morning Light suddenly stopped, her skin dimming to almost complete darkness. Listen. In the silence, I could hear it too, a subtle difference in the awakening sequence. The harmonics weren't just random variations. They were forming a pattern, a message. "This isn't just an emergency revival," she whispered, her large eyes wide with realization. "The stasis pods, they're communicating with each other. The elders, some of them are already awake, have been awake, watching." The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about preventing change anymore. This was about controlling it. Before I could process this revelation, my tablet's screen flickered with new information. The Guardian's code was shifting, evolving far more rapidly than should have been possible. Song of Morning Light's skin paled as she read the data. "They're not confused anymore," she said urgently. "They're learning, adapting, but not on their own. Someone's guiding them." A deep resonance shook the passage, and sections of crystal began to reshape themselves around us. We were being herded, I realized with growing alarm, not toward the control center, but somewhere else. Song of Morning Light's grip on my hand tightened as she came to the same conclusion. "The elders who stayed awake," she said, her voice tight with emotion, "they've been experimenting, haven't they? Using the Guardians to test us, to see how we'd evolve under constant protection. We weren't being preserved, we were being studied." Her skin flickered with patterns of anger and betrayal that needed no translation. The passage suddenly opened into a vast circular chamber, different from anything we'd seen before. The walls were lined with active stasis pods, but these weren't sealed. Through their crystalline surfaces, I could see elders moving, working at complex control interfaces. They turned to face us as we entered, their aged forms notable for their lack of surprise at our arrival. One of them stepped forward, their skin displaying patterns that made Song of Morning Light gasp. "Seeker of final truth," she breathed, "the first elder of the knowledge bearers." The ancient alien's skin rippled with acknowledgement, but there was something cold in their gaze. Such potential, the elder's translated voice filled the chamber. "Generation after generation, we watched you grow, adapt, push against the boundaries we set. Each time we adjusted the Guardians, you found new ways to challenge them. Perfect test subjects, proving what we had always feared, that uncontrolled change was inevitable." Other elders moved closer, their skin patterns showing a mix of scientific detachment and something that might have been pride. "Your crash," Seeker of Final Truth continued, gesturing to me, "provided an unexpected variable. A chance to see how our subjects would react to truly foreign influence, and you did not disappoint." Song of Morning Light's skin flushed with patterns of rage. "Your subjects? We're your children, your legacy. You were supposed to protect us, guide us. The elder's response was a complex pattern that my translator struggled to interpret, something between amusement and pity. "And so we did," they responded. "Through careful observation and controlled experiments, we have guided your evolution along the optimal path. Now, with the introduction of human technology, we can begin the next phase." They gestured to the chamber around us, where I now noticed other stasis pods, empty and waiting. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about preserving their civilization anymore. The awake elders had turned their entire society into a grand experiment in controlled evolution, and now they saw human influence as the next variable to study, to control, to preserve in their perfect moment of observation. My tablet suddenly sparked with energy as the chamber's systems attempted to interface with it directly. The Guardian's code was transforming, incorporating new protocols that would enable them to contain not just their own people, but any human visitors as well. They weren't just studying evolution anymore, they were trying to control it across species. Song of Morning Light moved closer to me, her skin displaying patterns I'd never seen before, something between defiance and determination. "You forgot one thing in your experiments," she said to the elders. "You forgot that real growth, real evolution, can't be controlled. It has to be chosen." Her hand found mine again, and I felt that same electric connection as before, but stronger now. The chamber's crystals began to pulse with increasing energy as more elders emerged from their pods, their combined presence creating a harmonic resonance that made my teeth ache. But something else was happening too. My tablet's interface with their systems was expanding, growing in ways neither human nor alien technology was meant to. We stood at the heart of their grand experiment, surrounded by the architects of a civilization frozen in time for the sake of study. But as I felt Song of Morning Light's determination flowing through our connected hands, I realized we had one advantage the elders hadn't counted on: the unpredictable power of genuine connection, of growth born from trust rather than control. The question was, could we find a way to use that connection before the elders and their guardians contained us all in their endless experiment? The chamber hummed with building energy as both sides prepared for a confrontation that would determine not just the future of one civilization, but potentially the course of human-alien relations forever. Song of Morning Light's skin began to glow with an intensity I hadn't seen before, patterns spiraling out from where our hands were joined. The elders moved to surround us, their ancient faces showing the first signs of concern as they realized something unprecedented was occurring. Whatever happened next would redefine everything they thought they knew about controlled evolution. The connection between Song of Morning Light and my tablet suddenly intensified, her bioluminescent patterns synchronizing with my device's display in ways that defied explanation. The chamber's crystals resonated in harmony, creating a cascading effect that spread through the entire complex. Through our joined hands, I could almost feel the vast network of systems that kept their civilization in stasis. Seeker of Final Truth moved forward, their ancient face showing the first real emotion I'd seen: fear. "Stop this immediately," they commanded, but their voice lacked its previous authority. "You don't understand what you're doing. The systems are too delicate, too interconnected. Any disruption cooled." The elder's warning was cut off by a deep resonance that shook the entire chamber. My tablet's screen filled with streaming data as their network began to respond to our combined interface in unexpected ways. The Guardian's code was transforming again, but this time it wasn't adapting to contain us. It was evolving to understand us. They were wrong. Song of Morning Light's voice was filled with wonder. The Guardians weren't just mindless protectors. They were learning all along, gathering data not just about how we evolved, but about how we connected with each other. Her skin pulsed with patterns that seemed to echo through the crystalline walls. They were waiting for proof that we could handle real change. The chamber's displays erupted with centuries of data, not just the elders' experiments, but the Guardians' own observations. They had watched generation after generation of young aliens forge bonds, solve problems, and grow despite their constraints. They had been silently evaluating not just their charge's ability to change, but their wisdom in doing so. "Impossible," one of the other elders whispered, their skin pale with shock. The Guardians were programmed to preserve, to protect, to preserve what matters, Song of Morning Light interrupted. And what matters isn't the moment, but the connection, the growth, the trust. As if in response to her words, the guardian units above began to move in new patterns, their crystalline forms resonating with a different kind of harmony. Suddenly, my tablet displayed something unexpected. A message, not from the Elder Systems or even the Guardians, but from deep within the planet itself. The complexest crystals had been more than just building materials or technology. They were part of a vast, living network that had witnessed everything, waiting for the moment when preservation and progress could finally find balance. The chamber shuddered as ancient machinery began to power down. The stasis pod's seals released with a series of soft hisses, while above, the Guardian units took up positions not of containment, but of support. Through our connected hands, Song of Morning Light and I could feel the change rippling through their entire civilization. You see, she addressed the elders, her voice strong and clear. Real protection isn't about control. It's about trust. About letting go enough to let growth happen naturally. Her skin patterns spread to the chamber's crystals, creating a display of such beauty that even the elders seemed moved. But Seeker of Final Truth wasn't finished. With a complex gesture, they activated a hidden protocol, and new harmonics filled the chamber. If we cannot control the experiment, they declared, then we will end it. The final preservation protocol. They never finished the sentence. The Guardian unit that entered the chamber moved with purposeful grace, its crystalline form shifting to reveal something none of us had expected, patterns that matched the planet's living network. They had never been just machines. They had been extensions of the planet itself, watching, learning, and waiting for all its children to be ready for the next step in their evolution. The final preservation protocol dissolved under the Guardian's touch, transformed into something new, not an ending, but a beginning. The chamber filled with light as the complexest systems reconfigured themselves, guided not by the elders' fear of change, but by the wisdom gathered through centuries of patient observation. Your crash, Song of Morning Light said softly. Looking at me, it wasn't an accident. The planet brought you here. It knew we needed a catalyst. Someone who could show us that different species, different technologies, different ways of thinking could work together instead of being locked away in separate moments of preservation. The light faded to reveal a transformed chamber. The stasis pods stood empty, their purpose served. The Guardians had taken up new positions as guides rather than wardens. And the elders stood in silent witness as centuries of careful control gave way to something far more valuable, genuine growth. But as we celebrated our victory, my tablet displayed one final message, a warning from the planet's crystal network. The changes we had set in motion were just the beginning. Something was stirring in deep space, something that had noticed our activities. Our successful merger of human and alien technology had sent ripples through the cosmos, attracting attention we might not be ready for. Song of Morning Light's skin displayed patterns of both triumph and concern as she read the message. We've proved that preservation and progress can coexist, she said thoughtfully. Now we have to prove we can use that wisdom to face whatever's coming. She looked at me, her large eyes reflecting the chamber's crystalline light. Together? I nodded, understanding that this wasn't really an ending at all. We had solved one problem only to discover a larger one waiting. But this time, we would face it not as separate species locked in our own preserved moments, but as allies who had learned the true value of connection and growth. The chamber hummed with new energy as we began preparations for whatever lay ahead. The Guardians, now partners in our evolution rather than its wardens, stood ready to help. And somewhere in the depths of space, something was moving toward us, drawn by the very changes we had fought so hard to embrace. But that, as they say, is a story for another time. In the days that followed our confrontation in the crystal chamber, I watched an ancient civilization transform itself. The young aliens, no longer constrained by the Guardians' protective protocols, began exploring their world with newfound freedom. But it wasn't the chaos the elders had feared. Instead, their natural curiosity was tempered by the wisdom they'd gained through generations of careful growth. Song of Morning Light took charge of integrating human technology with their systems, her natural ability to connect with both proving invaluable. Together, we repaired my ship using a combination of Earth engineering and crystal tech, creating something entirely new in the process. The Guardians, now acting as partners rather than wardens, provided insights that made the fusion of our technologies surprisingly elegant. The Elders, after their initial shock, began to adapt as well. Some struggled with the change, preferring to retreat to their studies to process everything that had happened. But others, led by a younger elder who called herself Dreamer of New Horizons, began working with their descendants, sharing knowledge that had been locked away for generations. The preservation protocols were dismantled one by one, replaced by guidelines that encouraged growth while respecting their cultural heritage. Most fascinating was watching the planet's crystal network become more active in their daily lives. What we had thought was simply an advanced alien technology turned out to be a complex symbiotic relationship between the crystalline formations and the planet's core. The network had been quietly guiding their evolution all along, using the Guardians as its hands and eyes, waiting for the moment when they would be ready to understand the true nature of their world. As for the warning about something stirring in deep space, preliminary scans showed unusual energy signatures moving in our direction. The planet's crystal network seemed more curious than concerned, suggesting whatever was approaching might be less of a threat and more of an opportunity. Still, we began preparing, combining our knowledge and technologies to face whatever might come. One evening, as I stood watching the twin suns set through the crystal spires of their newly awakened city, Song of Morning Light joined me. Her skin rippled with thoughtful patterns as she gazed at the horizon. "You know," she said softly, "the elders were right about one thing. Preservation is important. But they forgot that the most precious things worth preserving are the connections we make, the ways we grow together." She handed me a small crystal, its surface etched with patterns that matched both her bioluminescence and the digital signature of my tablet. "A gift," she explained, "and a promise. No matter what comes from deep space, our peoples are connected now. We'll face it the same way we faced the Guardians, together, with wisdom born from trust rather than fear." The crystal hummed softly in my hand, and I could feel the subtle resonance of their world's vast network acknowledging our bond. My ship was ready for the journey home, upgraded with crystal tech that would revolutionize human space travel. But we all knew I wouldn't be gone long. Earth needed to know about our new allies, about the amazing possibilities that arose when different species chose to grow together instead of apart. As I prepared for departure the next morning, Dancer in Starlight and Weaver of Dreams presented me with another gift, a guardian crystal, specially tuned to communicate with their network across vast distances. "So you don't miss the next evolution," they teased, their skin patterns showing friendship and hope. The elders, even seeker of final truth, came to witness my departure. Their faces showed a mix of resignation and curiosity about the future they could no longer control but could still help shape. The Guardians stood in formation, their crystalline forms refracting the morning sunlight in a spectacular display that felt very much like a salute. Taking one last look at this world that had taught me so much about the true meaning of progress, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best discoveries come not from careful preservation or unrestricted change, but from finding the wisdom to balance both. As my crystal-enhanced ship lifted off, carrying me back to Earth with news that would change human history, I knew this wasn't really an ending at all. It was simply the preservation of one moment before the next great adventure began.